All right, let's jump in here. Let's see here. Question from John. In HA groups, are there any settings other than session timeout that adjust the sensitivity of what triggers a failover?
No.
Quorum.
You want to do this one, or should I do this one?
Go ahead.
There are, and you can dig into a lot of these. There's stuff you can adjust in the cluster. However, understand that making a longer timeout means you're asking for slower failovers. We get availability groups because we don't want to be offline for a long time usually, right? So if I'm saying it's fine for failovers to take longer, then I'm already going, I'm going to have potentially longer downtime, and that is definitely a big trade-off. If you're asking this question, it would imply that you're having unplanned failovers, which I would really dig into why you're having that and what the root cause of it is before I go changing the settings. Because that question usually means that our availability group is not as available as we want, and you don't necessarily just want to make it less available.
Mm-hmm.
You have other thoughts? This is also true for like database mirroring and any high availability thing. Whenever you're thinking about stretching out the timeouts, kind of ask yourself, what's going on?
Yeah, and make sure everything's really redundant throughout your gear. Your networking gear needs to be really redundant.
Perfect. Let's see. Question from Jackie while we're staying on the topic of always-on availability groups. Her question or problem is that she has SQL 2012 always-on production system living in the DMZ. The original configuration called for all servers involved to be in the DMZ, witness and remote distributor included. Let's see. Well, this had to change and quickly as any firewall work caused. Oh wow, this is a long one. I've been scrolling down.
Yeah, it keeps going.
It just keeps going. Where's the question? Let's see. Is there a tweak we are missing in the cluster to make it less sensitive to network blips? Ooh, this is a long one.
I think the gist of the question is I have frequent network interruptions and it's causing problems with my availability group.
Mm-hmm.
What's up with that? Is there a way to make it better or not?
Let's take that.
I would think about it in terms of, do you even want automatic failover in this case? You may not even want automatic failover. You may be at the point where you just want the primary to keep right on trucking. But if you do want mission-critical primary, you want the mission-critical secondary sitting right next to it as close as possible, great network connectivity between them. As soon as you start introducing more network appliances and more differences between there, you're going to run into some problems, especially if the firewall is older, has CPU problems, is dropping packets.
Mm-hmm.
And if these guys are voters in the quorum, you can even have your others, even if you're not doing automatic failover, depending on how your quorum's configured, they could absolutely impact it. Yeah, really rock-solid network communication is what I would list as just like, it's a requirement to do okay with AGs. If you don't have that, it's going to really hurt. I can't think of a setting that just makes that better, because the first question we talked about, talking about relaxing standards and stuff like that, that's not going to really make your life better, I don't think.
Mm-hmm. All right. Question from Brian. Are there any dangers in increasing the compatibility level on a database that originated on an older version of SQL?
Maybe. If you're on SQL Server 2012 or earlier, not so much. Starting with SQL Server 2014, and you'll find out on Monday in 2016, according to a blog post Brent is going to link you guys to, that it will change. It changes which cardinality estimator you use in 2014 or even in 2016. So starting with 2014 compat level not only changes which syntax will explode, but it can also affect query outcomes. By syntax that will explode, I mean things like the old school outer join, like star equals and equals star. That stops working if you move off compat level 80, or no, 70? 80? 80? I don't remember. It's bad.
Oh, the joins stop working if you go above 80.
Yeah. So like certain things, it's mainly syntactical. It's stuff you're never going to be using anyway. But starting in 2014, it can change functionality and query performance.
So I have an upcoming webcast on migrating and upgrading SQL servers. If you join that webcast, I will have queries you can use to detect if you're using any of those old stuff that like detect the deprecated features or things that might be impacted by compat level. well as lots of other fun stuff.
Cool. Question from Thomas. Is it better to do and update statistics before or after you organize or rebuild indexes?
Ooh, so the interesting thing with rebuilding an index will update the statistics for that index, not for all the stats on the table, but just for that index. Defragging or reorging the index doesn't touch statistics. So it can get kind of complicated remembering which indexes got rebuilt and which ones didn't. This is one of the reasons we're big fans of Ola Hollengren's maintenance scripts. They will detect whether or not statistics need to be updated on each index after it's gotten through with the index rebuild process as well. Highly recommend for it. If you search for Ola Hollengren, spelling isn't even too important. It's only going to come up with one answer. But search for him, and then also search for him with our names involved. We've got our own post on how we change his defaults as well.
All right, this one's for you, Kendra. In your top 3 SQL Server index questions, I recall that she stated that the index creation suggested by the engine had a bug before SQL Server 2012. How reliable is this now in SQL Server 2014?
Oh, yeah. So, well, there's a couple different bugs in it. Prior to SQL Server 2012, it would often suggest an index that the same index with that definition already existed. So, like, you'd look at the index request, and it would be like column A and column B, and you look at your index, and you're like, I have an index on column A and column B. Why the heck and you didn't even use it. Why are you asking for that? I have not. It was marked as fixed in 2012. I have not seen it in SQL Server 2012 or higher than that. It's kind of hard to prove that it would never happen, but I've been looking for 3 years now, and I haven't found it yet. So I do believe that one is fixed.
Mm-hmm.
Happens all the time on 2008 R2, though.
All right, so Jesse is getting an error that says the log is not available for tempdb. He verified that the log is where it should be. Is the only way to resolve this issue to restart the instance?
I'm surprised the instance is even running. If
I don't have an answer, but it's not like restarting is going to put you in a worse state than you're currently in.
Well, I actually would want to know what the specific message was. It could be that the log is full.
Yeah. It could be that it's used by something else.
Right. It might be a perms error. It might be that the log is full. The exact error would make the difference.
It could be that your antivirus software has grabbed the log file for some reason and is just scanning it mindlessly.
The antivirus is a great example. Oh, that's really good. Jesse's saying, that's what I'm afraid of, it won't start back up. Dude, it's not like it's useful for you now if you don't have tempdb, right?
Yeah. Log is full. Log is full is very much different than the log file is missing. So.
Or, I hate to even suggest this, but if your instance is up and running and people aren't complaining, make sure you're looking at the right log. Maybe it's a log from another server, or that it's an older log.
Yeah, that basically, without a specific error message, it's really hard for us to say anything. Even with a specific error message, we might not be that useful, though. You can take the exact error message and post it to dba.stackexchange.com with the context around it. That way, because we don't really have that room for long questions, but that's what I would do if I was you for the next step.
All right, question from Jason Martin. SQL Server 2008 R2 clustered install will not allow us to set up tempdb on a local SSD. It's a 2012 feature, but planning on testing moving the tempdb to a local SSD drive after the install. Any experience or red flags you guys can speak of?
Yeah, big red flag, it's not supported.
Well, wait.
Look,
oh, I see. It's 2008 R2.
Yeah.
Just because you want to call support and get help.
Yeah, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. If you need that feature desperately, that's what 2012 is for. Kendra wants to tell him to do it. She's got bad idea genes on. We can't see him from the
I just happen to know that there's a famous SSD vendor who would send people a PDF on exactly how to do this unsupported thing. It's totally Fusion IO. So if you have Fusion IO cards, just talk to your vendor. They'll tell you how to do it. But Microsoft won't help you if you have problems, unfortunately.
It's like how shady mechanics would tell you how to put the turbo from a Ferrari in your, Ford. You can totally do it. Your warranty has disappeared the instant you do this.
You can totally run your car on Crisco. It'll work fine. Trust me.
All right, another question on reboots. Thomas Moore, running Logshipping, then the server got rebooted, and then the Logshipping was out of sync. Is there something that you need to do when rebooting the server to avoid a problem with Logshipping?
I bet the two things you're describing aren't actually connected. What I bet happened was a file got deleted or someone took a log backup out of band. There probably just happened to be a reboot around the same time where someone noticed it around the time the reboot happened. But you can reboot your brains out and it won't affect Logshipping.
Yeah, it might get behind. I'm not sure if he means it got behind or if it broke. It shouldn't break just from a reboot, like Brent said. If it gets behind because it was offline a long time, then that might be normal for it to take a while to catch up, especially if you're in like the readable mode. But I'm not sure what you mean.
Or if you have really aggressive deletion and you were behind because you loaded a bunch of data or rebuilt all of your indexes for giggles and you have really aggressive deletion policies.
One other weirdo, wild, strange one. So Redgate SQL Backup will write the backups locally, and I believe Idera does this too. We'll write the backups locally and then push them up to a file share. I can imagine a scenario where it was in the middle of that and the log file got trashed. This is just another reason why I don't ever recommend backing up locally. Always back up off the server. Like Kendra says, somewhere where your Windows starting up doesn't impact your backup files.
Mm-hmm. All right, quick question from Glenn Thompson. When should you use database roles?
Always. Next question.
They're great. They're a fantastic feature. They help you avoid just giving people like way too many permissions.
If you want to learn more about them, search for developers who needs a DBA. Brent, Ozar. I have a webcast about how to fake your way through database administration, and roles is one of the things I talk about and how to get there.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Question from Jeff Taylor. What would be a recommendation for the best solution for production, 2-server cluster, and then adding DR? 1 server, mirroring, clustering, HA group? Jeff Taylor, I have a feeling the answer to this is going to be it depends.
Well, I would recommend going to brentozar.com/go/fail and filling out the RTO checklist with the business from the business perspective and also yourself from the technology perspective. And once you have the numbers from those different groups, like what can we do today as IT, what does the business want, the second page of that PDF in there is actually a list of the various solutions. There's an axis along the top for recovery time and an axis on the side for recovery point objective. And you go and you look in the little box, and it tells you which technology you should be aiming for. Easy to do it for you. All
right, HR question. Why don't we have a triage specialist yet? Any updates on that?
Kendra's standards are just way too high. Kendra's standards are just way too high.
Wait, one of the audience is asking this?
Yeah.
Wait, do you need triage urgently? If so, please contact Jessica immediately. Operators are standing by.
Actually, this is a great time to do a critical care because the triage specialists are our consultants, like Brent, Kendra, Jeremiah, Doug, Eric. They can be your triage specialists.
We have lots of triage.
Yes, and lots of specialists.
Yes.
Because unlike my first ex-wife, we're not settling for the first idiot that shows up.
Oh, man.
I made fun of them and me. It's awesome.
Nice.
Yeah.
Someone says, I won't name his name, says, I didn't make the cut, but I hope the search is going well. Search is going really well, actually. Having a good time.
That's nice.
And you totally weren't the first one that applied, person who made that comment. You aren't the one Jeremiah's talking about.
That's awesome. Let's see. What is your take on SIOS Sandless replication versus Logshipping for a disaster recovery plan? From Daniel.
Smiles and poker faces. Here we go.
This is a very vendor-specific question. So let's make this a little more general to not that specific vendor and just say any kind of filter driver that is transferring information intercepted as SQL Server writes it to disk versus a SQL Server technology like Logshipping. How about that? A little less iffy.
I like it. Yeah. So generally speaking, if we're talking about something that's mission critical to us, like our job relies on it, I just try not to inject any third-party software if there's something built in that works just as well. And Logshipping works really, really well. I can test over on the other side. I can look to see that my database is restoring. I get nice success messages from SQL Server, can upgrade SQL Server. I get all kinds of nice tools and tricks. Not saying that anybody's third-party software isn't good. I just would want to see the advantage that they bring, and I would also want to make sure that they never have bugs. Small question.
And if you think about what they're doing, it's really hard, because think about just sending the data that's going to disk over to a secondary server. What if it gets sent over out of order? Is your database going to come online consistently? That's a really hard problem that they have. We need it to perform really well, but the order of writes to your transaction logs really, really matters. And SQL Server needs what it thinks in the data files to actually be in there. So it's not like filter drivers are easy for any vendor. Performance and consistency is a really hard problem.
And it's also when people ask about it, you know, I always mention, like, think about every time your video card driver or your sound card driver or your mouse driver has messed up and made something not work on your computer. You are now putting that in between SQL Server and your disks. Jessica's like, I remember that when I ran Windows, yes.
Yes, absolutely. It's so awkward because I can't see you. I'm like, I wonder what he's doing.
We're gesturing, we're making fun, we're dancing.
After I ask a question, I don't know if one of you's like, Brent usually ducks out. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, no. Never before has someone been so anxious to see us. Never.
Now, of course, we're all like, dancing around.
I can see it.
Yes.
All right. Do you foresee any issues with disabling the SA login if you already have a login with sysadmin privilege granted?
In theory, no.
Why would you do it, though? Like, if you want to disable SQL authentication, disable SQL authentication, but that's a little different than disabling the login.
Well, there is in the security world, and this is like the only thing I'll talk about security. There's a huge thing where you disable default administrator accounts, and you may create other admin accounts. But like on Windows, you're supposed to actually disable administrator and create another one. My brother always names it after his favorite actresses from the 30s.
But if I was trying to have good security, I should be using Windows Auth only and no SQL Auth, right?
Correct. In a perfect world, you would turn off SQL Auth entirely and just use Windows Auth.
Yeah.
That way, it's somebody else's problem.
So there have been, and I forget which service pack it was in SQL 2005 that broke if you didn't have SA enabled.
Or if you renamed it.
Yeah. And I would also just worry about any third-party apps that sometimes the vendors are like, it has to install its SA. So we're all, I think, for enabling or renaming, but just, be careful out in the real world.
Or if you set up linked servers between dev and prod because reasons, and you forgot that you did it because you were young and drunk.
Yesterday.
Let's see. Question from Joseph Haynes. Let's say someone insists on using rebuild index tasks and maintenance plans rather than some fancy, useful, elegant script. Maintenance plans seem to be brute force list of indexes. The question is, does the T-SQL for this task get rebuild each time the maintenance class run task, or will indexes added after the maintenance task is created be missed in future maintenance?
It picks all the ones that are there every time it runs. It's like select star from sysindexes. Go.
It will bulldoze them all. Yes. If you add a new 10 gig table with an index, it will bulldoze it. Like what is a? I'm trying to think what a bulldozer gesture is. It's like or maybe a snowplow. It's just yeah.
Well, it would be funny to get all our videos going exactly the right direction. So.
Do the wave.
All right. Question from Mr. Martin. Not even going to try to say that first name. Logshipping goes well for a couple hours, but when I get a previous restore with continue after error operation, I am not sure where to go to look for any clues. I have reconfigured LS multiple times.
I want to see the full error message. I'm not sure exactly what that means, if the restore failed or that it was accidentally run with recovery. So it's a little beyond what we can answer quickly here. What I would do is, when the slide posts by about post your answer on dba.stackexchange.com, put all your information in there with the exact full error message, and then someone can go dig into that as well.
Oh, I think you just added the error message.
It says, yeah, restore with continue after error left the database in a potentially damaged state. So this could be anything from corruption. There could be all kinds of things going on. This is a little beyond what we can troubleshoot quickly.
We have George as well that's asking a question about some troubleshooting errors. His error is lib error. He concluded the number. Are you guys familiar with that error?
Never heard of it before.
That looks like an application-specific error too. So it looks like some Sev5 error was thrown in SQL Server. There's something really weird in the text, though. I think that is an app error, not a SQL error.
Yeah, this looks to me like it's an application error coming from a stored procedure that somebody has created. This does not look to me like a SQL Server error, especially because it's severity 5. If it were a Sev5 error, who cares? I don't know of anything that throws an error that low.
All right, let's see. Blitz index question from Greg Smith. An SB Blitz index, what magic benefit number makes you panic or decide to make an index?
None. So none of them should make you panic. Like, no number should make you panic. Know that the magic number is based on a lot of estimates. So I think the threshold we have in there, I think, is 500,000 is where it shows up by default in the script just as something of interest. But let's say somebody rebuilt all my indexes yesterday and it's 2012. Maybe this is just uses since yesterday. So even a lower number might actually be of interest if you're resetting that read and write information. Anytime you see high values in that, what it's asking you to do is look at the existing indexes and that index and just decide, is it worth it? But you also have to factor in the size the index is going to be, the number of columns, and the number of reads and writes on the table. So the number should just kind of trigger that investigation, and then you have to take all that into account, because the number doesn't account for index size, read and write, that kind of thing. It's a pretty simplistic number based on estimates.
Okay. Question. As a part of our weekly maintenance plan, we used to rebuild clustered and non-clustered indexes on major tables. However, we continuously get bad query plans on Monday and Tuesday. Microsoft suggested that they run full scan on all tables at least once a month, since we cannot run full scan on the table all week because of the maintenance window we have. Do you guys have any thoughts on this?
Kendra's going to go. All we have to do is pull a string, so like wherever, whichever side she's on.
Actually, Monday and Tuesday are just really bad days.
Yes, it's a bad day for SQL Server.
It's like a bad luck day.
SQL Server is sample. The default behavior is to sample your data. There's no guarantee that that full scan is going to be any better than a random sampling at a certain percentage that SQL Server is choosing. Microsoft support is telling you to flip a switch in case it magically unbreaks your problem. This is not potentially going to solve anything at all. They've just said, here, do a thing because reasons. It's velocity on the ticket. It shows motion.
I would look at the bad query plan. So you know you have the bad query plans. Look at those. Why are you getting the bad query plan? Is it really statistics or not? Like you got to do the work to really get to the root of that. Sometimes it's stats, but usually there's just one or two that's really critical to the plans.
It can also be that you mentioned you're rebuilding pretty much everything on the major tables, and if the major tables are bigger than RAM, you're probably pushing stuff out of memory, and it may take 1 to 2 days for the active data set to be pulled up into memory and stick around for the rest of the week. I'm just guessing now.
Yeah, it's so interesting. It's a really good question, like why Microsoft would recommend something. And of course, we can't see what the history was. Maybe some yo-yo had set the hard-coded the samples to like 100 rows on the tables. It's unlikely. It's just that it's one of those solutions that people throw out there because it seems to make complaints go away.
It seems to shut you up for a little bit.
Yeah.
He says when we run recompile the SP, it works fine. You just follow it.
So you're in a perfect position. So now you want to know what the bad plan was before, what the plan looks like after, compare the two, and go, how can I make sure that this stored procedure always gets the good plan? That's one of the things that we talk about in our advanced querying and indexing classes. It's a 5-day-long class. The next one's happening in January in Newark. So when you want to learn how to do that kind of differentiation to make your code consistently fast, that class is your friend.
January in Newark.
No one would want to go.
Exactly. I mean, like ideal vacation spot, right?
Sounds like a good time to be on the West Coast.
Sounds fragrant, right? Just fragrant and it's going to be fun.
Let's see. Thomas Moore, in addition to trace, is there a good way to quickly troubleshoot causes of deadlocks?
Extended events.
Even Brent, have you tried the extended events deadlock trace, Brent?
Hold on.
Okay, well, let me tell you. So when you do it with Profiler, you have to save all the deadlock graphs to these individual files. You don't have to, in extended events in 2012 and higher, you can get everything from one trace file and even see the graphs and related information without like all of that bizarro configuration. I think it's actually really easy to set up, and I love it. As much as you can love anything that involves deadlocks, which is limited.
I just call Doug. Doug knows how to do it. Doug, buddy.
Doug the deadlock doctor.
Where is Doug when you need him?
Yeah, that actually is my default solution too, is to ask Doug.
You should have an SP, ask Doug.
Yes.
SP, and it will report on deadlocks. We really should. Actually, poor Doug, he'll be like, why?
I've actually been talking to a lot of prospects that are running into deadlocks and want to work with us. It seems to be one of the top ones.
Have a nice week, Doug.
My favorite thing about deadlocks, which again, not something nobody likes, but the term to explain them is a deadly embrace. That's what it's. When two transactions have a deadly embrace and one of them dies.
Oh gosh. Oh, that sounds terrible. So now I know to send all things deadlocks and all things dynamics to Doug. Doesn't he love that app too?
Doug will really appreciate that.
So now we're hiring for 2 positions.
We assign things alphabetically, so Doug gets everything that has the letter D in it.
Oh boy. All right. Well, that's all the time we have for today.
Thanks everybody for coming to hang out with us, and we will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.